You're listening to the B Fox and B Frank show. Game of the week last week, Stanford, Oregon. This was all Oregon to start. Stanford coming back to win in overtime. First of all, I mean, looks like Oregon's for real. But I mean, for Stanford, does this kind of elevate them into a potential playoff team truly in your eyes?
I mean, they've still got Notre Dame and Washington to beat. I think this gives them a little more leeway. They can probably lose to one of those two and still have a shot at it. But I think we saw some glaring issues from Stanford. But in the end, KJ Costello was the one that won them that game. Obviously, the defense had a huge part to do with it, but he had a tremendous game against Oregon. He was better than we've seen him yet. He did it pretty much without the use of our Arcega Whiteside. He did have 2 touchdown catches, but he only had 4 total receptions. So he was spreading the ball around to just about everybody. And again, that defense came up timely, made some big plays. Bryce Love was good. He probably wasn't as good as I had expected him to. And then I looked at the box score and saw that he had 89 yards and a touchdown. But this was a KJ Costello and Stanford defense win.
And Bryce Love is always hurt by the measuring stick that is himself and kind of how high those expectations are. But yeah, this is definitely KJ Costello's game. Colby Parkinson in overtime too, kind of just tipping that touchdown to himself, and then Oregon unable to answer. But yeah, I mean, from the start, it looked like, we were dead wrong about Oregon. Got out 23-7, almost 30-7, but they had a touchdown overturned. Stanford takes a fumble right back for a touchdown the other way, and that kind of just flipped the entire game.
Yep.
But yeah, that's really got to hurt if you're Oregon, because again, this was the first time they were really playing a real team, and I mean, for the start of the game at least, they definitely looked ready for it.
They looked like a runaway train. They looked like they could not be stopped. Herbert was really good for a little while. They had Verdell on the ground. Didn't even know who this kid was. 115 yards on 20 carries. And Dylan Mitchell, 14 catches for 239 yards is outrageous.
Yeah, literally everyone else had 12 catches for 107 yards. So he's doing the lion's share of the work by himself. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to look at this as an Oregon fan and take any sort of solace whatsoever, but kind of getting back to the point of being a team that can compete with and beat top 10, top 5 teams. Obviously came up a little short on the beat part, but going forward, trying to get back to where they perennially were under the likes of Chip Kelly, that's got to be somewhat of an encouraging sign.
Yeah, it shows they're ready to play. I mean, honestly, they're 4 minutes, essentially 5 minutes away from pulling off the win and being probably top 15, top 10 right now. And, everyone going from Herbert's good to, wow, this Herbert kid's for real. I mean, I think he is for real, but there would be much more talk about him if they had been able to pull off the win. But again, it's just one of those things, a couple bad breaks, and all of a sudden Oregon's sitting there wondering what the hell went wrong when they played so well for a majority of the game.
Yeah, and the other big game last week taking place in Tuscaloosa, really the only drama here was whether or not Texas A&M would cover. They did. They only lost 45-23, but I mean, Tua, 397 total yards, 5 total touchdowns. I mean, Alabama's just on a different level from everybody else.
It's terrifying. They're so good. They're so freaking good. And Tua doesn't really make those bad mistakes that we had maybe thought he was capable of just from that one half we saw in the national championship with the interceptions. But I where do you go? What do you do if you play Alabama? Like, you have to beat Georgia essentially and be able to match up athlete for athlete.
Pretty much, yeah. And it is a relatively young defense and maybe not quite as dominant by Alabama standards, but that's kind of like the Bryce Love thing where they're just kind of a victim of how good they've been. So that's what they're being judged against. Still very good. I mean, Kellen Mond is a very good quarterback. He had his fair share of struggles on Saturday trying to dissect that defense. And I mean, pretty much anyone else who tries will face the same issues. I don't know. There's going to be some big games in the coming weeks. It'll be very interesting to see how close LSU is able to make it. But yeah, at the rate they're going, it seems like Alabama won't really face a challenge till maybe even Georgia.
Yeah, and going back to Mond real quick, he had a decent game, but he showed flashes of brilliance where you can see the potential that he has and just how good he can be when he gets a little time or space to make plays. He's a true dual threat quarterback and was showing that for Jimbo's offense. But it's the machine. They just keep on rolling. I'm sure Saban has a lot to be pissed about, and he'll figure out different ways to claim it's us against the world. But I mean, it's hard when you've got a guy like Jalen Hurts that can sit 75% of the game and then come in at the end and play garbage time.
Yeah, I mean that's whoever Saban has on his staff just kind of coming up with bulletin board material. It's got to be one of the hardest working guys in sports.
Absolutely.
Is that it's so difficult for anyone outside the program to spin them as facing any sort of adversity whatsoever. People in the program, I would imagine, it's got to be even harder. But it's just reality. Just Alabama feels pretty close to Sharpie for the playoff already, which is ridiculous. But I mean, they've just been that dominant. Somebody has to prove me otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, if they could have covered the spread there, that would have been the most impressive thing. Go undefeated against the spread and to start the season.
That would, yeah, that's the next step.
Yep.
Once Saban starts bringing like newspapers to press conferences and like circling spreads, then he's just too bored with everything else. Needs a new challenge. We have quite the slate this week. We'll start with the most marquee matchups. Got Ohio State at Penn State, last two undefeated teams in the Big Ten. This game, last time in Happy Valley, was kind of Penn State's coming out party under James Franklin, what really vaulted them into a perennial top 15, top 10 team. Can lightning strike twice?
I say yes, just because I picked Penn State to win the Big Ten preseason. I've got to stick with my guns. I think Ohio State looks really freaking good. Dwayne Haskins has exceeded expectations, and they've got, I mean, obviously, so many weapons on that team. The defense has been a little bit shaky. I know they've been dealing with some injuries, but for the amount of talent they have, you kind of expect a little better. And then Penn State's coming off arguably their worst three-quarter performance. I mean, they've let down against App State. They've let down in the first three quarters against Illinois and then lit them up for 35 points in the fourth. But you got to expect that they're going to come sharp for Ohio State this week. I think McSorley finally gets his game together and the defense steps up and forces some turnovers from Haskins. So I'm going to say Penn State wins in a very close game.
I mean, I was watching that Penn State-Illinois game on Friday, and yeah, all too familiar script as an IU football fan. I've seen Penn State do that a couple times, but I mean, Miles Sanders looks like a very good replacement for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
200 yards, 3 touchdowns against Illinois and only 22 carries. But I am still taking Ohio State here. As we've been saying all year, Dwayne Haskins has been absolutely ridiculous. He's up to 17 total touchdowns now through the first 4 weeks of the season. And I would not be surprised at all if this does turn into a track meet. These two offenses are that good. But I think Ohio State is going to be able to kind of steal a win in the hostile environment. But this could be the de facto Big Ten championship.
It seems that way, especially, given the mess that's going on in the West and, Michigan, no one's really sure what they are. Michigan State's been up and down, but I don't know. I feel Penn State, besides the fact that I picked them under the lights, the whiteout at home. It's Happy Valley's a weird place.
I mean, that's going to be an extremely tough environment. It's
Yeah.
the only thing that gives me pause. Neutral field would take Ohio State without hesitation, but yeah, this is going to be a close game. It'll be up to Haskins to really weather that first true hostile environment. Because obviously, it's not like Rutgers is. So we'll have to see how he fares, but I'm confident he'll be able to handle it. The other top 10 matchup, basically the second tier of teams like in the playoff, we've been saying 7 Stanford, number 8 Notre Dame in South Bend. Might be the toughest remaining game on Notre Dame's schedule, but new starting quarterback Ian Book looks very, very good.
Yeah, the defense played pretty well for Notre Dame. Kind of a bend don't break mentality against Wake Forest last week. Ian Book got off to a slow start and then really got rolling. Over 300 yards passing, a couple touchdowns on the ground and through the air. The offense looks completely different when he's on the field as opposed to Brandon Wimbush. It just makes you wonder if Brandon Wimbush could throw the ball a little more accurately, how good could this Notre Dame offense be? Because they're dynamic with Tony Jones Jr. and Jafar Armstrong in the backfield, along with Wimbush running that read option. If he had a throwing piece to his game, they'd be dominant. But Ian Book does bring that passing element, not as much with the legs. But yeah, this is one of those games where had Costello not had his coming out party last week and proven that he's a big game quarterback that has that ability, I would have taken Notre Dame easily in this one. I'm still going to take the Irish. I think it's a very close game, probably similar to this Oregon-Stanford game in terms of score, low 30s, I would say. But I think Notre Dame gets it done.
Yeah, there were great signs for both teams last week. As you mentioned, Costello kind of opening up Stanford's offense, and then Book doing the same thing for Notre Dame. Wimbush is fairly predictable for defenses because he is a much better runner than passer. So you can kind of cheat to that, but it was great to see that Notre Dame can actually win a game in a blowout, especially on the road.
Yeah.
Because so far this year, obviously Michigan's a tough opponent, but after that, Ball State, Vanderbilt sort of played more to their opponent's level than kind of letting talent win out. And I think that'll set up well going into this week. So Dexter Williams will be coming back to the backfield for Notre Dame, so that'll help matters, give Book another weapon on offense. Since it didn't happen last week, I'm worried now that this is going to be Bryce Love's breakout game of the year.
It could just be the JT Barrett syndrome, though, where we wait and wait and wait all year, and it just never happens.
Right, but I think Bryce Love has a better track record than JT Barrett. Right. I would love for it to continue, obviously, as a fairly biased Notre Dame fan, but yeah, I think this is one with Brandon Wimbush at the helm. Notre Dame probably loses, but I think Ian Book can just kind of give in that extra dimension to Notre Dame's offense. That'll be enough to eke out a home victory.
And you got to think that Notre Dame's going to force Costello to beat him. You're gonna load the box every time. You're gonna put your best defensive back on Arcega-Whiteside and go and see what you can do. But if this turns into a shootout, I actually have confidence that Notre Dame can keep scoring with Stanford.
Yeah, exactly. And historically, I feel like that has kind of been the strategy against Stanford. You kind of try to slow down the likes of Toby Gerhart, Stephon Taylor. Really backfired when Andrew Luck played there, but for the most part, Stanford's quarterbacks have not been at the same level. So we'll see. But both taking Notre Dame there. We've got a couple of good matchups on Friday night, actually. Like one Pac-12 after dark, one that's half Pac-12 after dark. We'll start with the half. BYU up into the top 20 now, traveling to Seattle, take on Washington. Obviously, BYU with the big win over Wisconsin. Washington lost first game of the year against Auburn and has basically been trying to climb back up to where they were since. Who are you liking in this one?
I like Washington. I've said it from the start of the year. I think they're the best team in the Pac-12. I appreciate that BYU's had a good season thus far, but I don't see them pulling off another win like they did against Wisconsin. There's too much on offense, and especially that Washington defense. They looked so good last week against Arizona State. You got to think that Browning and Gaskin are going to get it together a little more as the season moves on. They're very slow starting so far, and I mean, they really haven't played that poorly. They just haven't played to their full ability. So I think they're going to continue to improve as it goes on, and I just don't think BYU, Tanner Mangum and company can't really keep up.
And Washington has more on offense than Wisconsin does.
Yes,
they're not a team that that BYU can kind of bank on, like just hanging around, keeping within striking distance, because they do actually have, a passing offense, which Wisconsin regrettably does not. Last night's Alex Hornibrook performance notwithstanding. Yeah, I mean, especially playing at Washington, which is actually a very tough place to play. I mean, BYU's had a brutal schedule to start the season. I mean, Cal is ranked now too, and that's their one loss on the year. But I just don't see them going into Washington and stealing a win here. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, especially considering they pretty much shut down N'Keal Harry last week, and he is easily one of the best receivers in the country.
Yeah, and yeah, like we said before the Auburn game, before the start of the year, the secondary is pretty much at the level it was when Washington first took that leap under Chris Peterson, made the college football playoff. It's a big part of why there are such high hopes there this year, along with, of course, Browning Gaskin coming back for year 8. But yeah, I mean, BYU will find that out real fast, I have a feeling. And then the other one, the aforementioned Cal Golden Bears hosting Oregon, fresh off that overtime loss. Oregon actually moved up a spot in the polls for, I guess, losing in impressive fashion.
Statement loss.
Yeah, big time statement loss at home. So Oregon able to bounce back here. Is Cal for real? What are your thoughts on this one?
I am not sold on Cal. I think that Oregon is very good. I really like Herbert, and I like this offense. I don't know that the defense can hold up, but I also don't think Cal is any bit of a world beater. They beat North Carolina with half their team suspended by 7, beat BYU by 3, and then Idaho State put up 23 against them. So I think Oregon can put up points in the 40s here, and I don't think that Cal has the offense to hang with them.
Cal has kind of been a lot like the Bears, just pretty reliant on defense, and then asking the offense to do just enough to eke out some victories. Basically, very close win over BYU was part of that. But yeah, it's very hard to see Cal making much of a threat to Oregon, especially with Wilcox coming over there as head coach anyway. He's historically so defensive-minded, came through the ranks as a D coordinator. So not surprising that Cal's offense isn't exactly terrifying. Been starting a freshman at quarterback in Chase Garbers, sometimes platooning, but that just involves bringing in a sophomore off the bench as more of a running threat and Brandon McElwain. I mean, on paper, put next to Justin Herbert, Burdell, Mitchell, not much of a comparison there. It'll take a gargantuan effort from the Cal defense to try to keep this one close, and I really don't see that happening. I think Oregon takes this one.
Yeah, I like Oregon big. I appreciate the home field in the Pac-12 after dark where things get weird, but It feels like, if Oregon had won last week, this feels like a classic letdown game at Cal, but they've got to get back on track very quickly here.
And then it's early in the season, so Texas Tech is ranked. It is about that time of year. Number 12, West Virginia, traveling to the 25th ranked Red Raiders. I have to ask, just out of courtesy, who's winning this game?
You already know West Virginia will win. They'll put up a ton of points. Will Greer didn't look great last week. It took him a little while to get going, and then at the end of the half, he finally did against Kansas State. The defense played extremely well, really did well stopping the run. Texas Tech's defense is so-so. They do have Dakota Allen, who's great, but other than that, there's not too much to write home about. They will score points. That's just a given, but I think West Virginia's defense is better than Texas Tech's offense, and I think West Virginia's offense will go off this week. I think this is a big week for my guy, Will Greer.
In the difference Texas Tech looked between week one loss to Ole Miss and then last week where they absolutely throttled Oklahoma State, it's like night and day. Actually, some defense being played there held Oklahoma State to 17 points. They, of course, have another gunslinger back there. Alan Bowman now thrown for just under 1,600 yards on the season already. This will be week 5, so kind of give you an idea of how that offense is humming along. But yeah, I think Will Greer, still the better player. Not really going out on the ledge there, but West Virginia is going to be too much because their defense by Big 12 standards is still pretty good. And then so something I noticed you saw the other day. Just want to double confirm. 3 touchdowns to David Sills last week. That taken over your mind? Greer to Sills taken over from Mason Rudolph to James Washington is the best combo in the country.
Yeah, it's actually incredible how many touchdowns they've thrown. Or Greer's thrown to Sills. It's somewhere in like the upper 20s or low 30s, I think. And Greer has thrown for like over 300 yards in all but 2 games in his West Virginia career. So he throws for a ton of yards, and David Sills is his favorite target. He had 10 catches last week. I see it going about the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree. I think it's remarkable, really, too. You're saying that Greer didn't look all that great last week, and he still ends up throwing for over 350 yards, 5 touchdowns. Still got to be at this point clubhouse leader for the Heisman, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Maybe Dwayne Haskins is up there with him,
Right.
But I think he is pretty comfortably up there.
Yeah, Haskins is the only other name to come to mind. I think Bryce Love's going to run out of time really soon. It's kind of one of those things we keep expecting it to happen. Maybe it doesn't. He has, a good year, but just not where he was last year. But yeah, I mean, Greer and maybe Haskins at this point. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Tua.
I was going to say Tua too.
Nudged his way into there. The more reps he gets, and they pretty much have gone away from the 2 quarterback system, and pretty clearly his team now.
I mean, you can maybe make an argument for Mackenzie Milton, but I don't think he's really at the production yet.
Yeah, and I mean he's going to forever be hurt by playing at UCF, but it's another team. So it's going to expand just talking about the playoff. It feels we're 4 weeks into the season, and it seems like cast iron almost that we're already set. Like in some order: Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. Upsets will happen, obviously, and I think Ohio State's going to have the toughest road there, navigating through the Big Ten East, starting it this week. But any other teams out there that really look like playoff caliber teams? Because I know Notre Dame, Stanford, kind of the next wave of teams, but we said last week they're not really, looking like on the same level as the aforementioned 4.
Yeah, I have three teams that I could see sneaking into the playoff. One of them is going to be shocking. The other two, I think, well, actually, we'll say they're all shocking. But I'm going to say number one is
Wow.
LSU. I think LSU can actually make the playoff. Joe Burrow is only going to get better because he really hasn't played that well throughout the season.
It's been so.
They've got great running back in Brosette, and the defense is one of the best they've had in a while, and that's really saying something. The next two teams are both out of the Big 12. I think the winner of that, so long as they're undefeated, has a shot at the playoff, and it's Oklahoma or West Virginia. Obviously, I have been high on the Mountaineers since before the season, since pretty much the end of last year. I've been pretty high on the Mountaineers. Oklahoma's an interesting team. They struggled mightily with Army this week, won in overtime. I think Kyler Murray is good, and if they threw the ball a little more, they've just got so many good running backs. If they threw the ball a little more, he might be more in that Heisman talk. He takes care of the ball, is very productive with it. The defense is pretty darn good too. I just think West Virginia can score and outscore anybody. Maybe not Alabama or Georgia, but they will definitely go in there and put up a fight much better than a team like Washington a few years ago or previous Oklahoma last year. So those are the three teams on the outside that I see that have a chance. Other than that, I mean, I picked Penn State to make the playoff, I think they're going to win this week. So I would say they also have a good shot with a good running back, good quarterback, and solid defense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like Oklahoma, honestly, is like the hope for the Big 12. I feel like a letdown at some point is going to come for West Virginia, as much fun as they are and as much as I want them to succeed. I mean, the only other team really that's got a pretty good path, I mean, the Central Florida. Yeah. Obviously, AP poll, not the same as college football rankings when they come out, but it has to be somewhat of an encouraging sign that it's the end of week 4. They're already knocking on the door of the top 10. I know saying this, the first playoff rankings are going to come out and they're going to be at like 25th, but for now there's some hope. And I mean, they looked good late against FAU on Friday, not necessarily early. I do think that missing out on the UNC likely win could come back to hurt them, or at least that's an argument that will be used against them. But yeah, just looking through the top 25 outside of the 4 that are in there, I mean, Oklahoma's the only one right now I can see confidently as a playoff team. But there's going to be somebody who jumps up and surprises us. Somebody is going to lose from that top 4, and I mean, there's going to be some zaniness coming. What about like Kentucky? Like, there's a team. I'm not saying them as a specific case here, but a team like that always seems to pop up yearly, and like late, and then people are like, oh shit, this is actually a good football team. I can't root for Kentucky this year, but like a team like that is still likely to make some noise. And I mean, they looked pretty damn good, kicking the snot out of Mississippi State over the weekend.
Yeah, they've got a really good defense, and that's the bottom line of it. They take care of the ball on offense, and then they come at you and play smash mouth football on the defensive end, led by, I believe, Josh Allen, which is just phenomenal that we have another great Josh Allen in college football. That I agree. I think Kentucky can compete in the East. All they have to do, I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but all they have to do is beat Georgia, and they've got a shot.
Alabama, probably, yeah.
But
easy enough.
I mean, if you look at it like that, it's hard to say they don't have a chance. That being said, I think they're going to get the doors blown off them by Georgia. But if you can get it into a slop fest or a low-scoring, methodical game, you've got a shot to win against any of these teams.
Yeah, but that is kind of the thing we have to start looking at this point, because it seems like the top four, pretty universal, have such a clear advantage over everyone else in the field. It's just coming down to who can kind of have the easiest path or most advantageous team, or something of like that. Because I'm bracing so hard for when these rankings start coming out, and I hate them so much. Because it's going to spawn so much ill will, and I mean heated debates. I don't like it already, but hopefully this weekend will provide a lot of clarity there, especially with the two top 10 matchups. A sort of separation Saturday, if you will, really establishing teams as true playoff and title contenders or not.
So now, if Notre Dame, the loser of Notre Dame Stanford, they're out. You think they're done for the year?
Honestly, yeah. Like, because looking at Notre Dame's schedule,
USC doesn't look good. Virginia
Tech. There are Virginia Tech, Florida State. Yeah. Those games all look a lot worse in terms of prestige than when the schedule was released. So I don't know if there's enough there to push them all the way back up into that conversation. A win over Stanford obviously puts them right there.
Yeah, I think the good news, though, is we've seen when top 10, top 15 teams have played each other, so long as it stays close, they're not necessarily getting plummeted out of the rankings.
Right. Washington's still right there.
Auburn.
But both those teams, 10 and 11 in the AP, obviously not the same as playoff rankings, but that's all we have right now. Then it just turns into a true war of attrition. And the rest of the schedule is manageable, but I don't think we can necessarily give Notre Dame a free pass and assume they would win every single game. I just think losing this game at home would pretty much kill their hopes, climb back up too high. Stanford, they can get back in there. Win over Washington would certainly be helpful. But yeah, there's not a ton left on their schedule either. So that really makes this game like triply important for both teams.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're in week 5 and we're already talking about a winner go home matchup.
I mean, that's how good those top 4 have looked this year. It's going to take, a Herculean effort from somebody just to give any of them one loss, and even that I don't assume would drop any of them that far, because people will still say, well, look at how good they look on paper and the eye test. So it's kind of another thing working in their favor.
Yeah, it feels like it's a matter of time when you're talking about it right now, and there's 4 clear-cut teams that we're moving to 6 at least, and that I guess would be the hope.
Yeah, unfortunately had to eliminate my beloved Hoosiers on Saturday night. They did not come to play against Michigan State, and that is the worst of the 4 Big Ten East teams. They're going to be heavy underdogs in, so gotta put those national title hopes away, but playing for 6 wins now in a bowl game, just
there
like always. Anything else you wanted to touch on?
College basketball starts up this week.
It does, yeah. Holy shit. Hoosier Hysteria is in September. It's really got me noticing that. But yeah, that's gonna be exciting.
It's gonna have a lot to talk about.
It will. But for now, we're still in the thick of football season. We will see what happens on this Separation Saturday. Be back to talk to you next week. So keep watching that college football. Keep listening to the spread option, and keep tuning into this one.